Now, I know you lovely lot keep a nice clean bike, but gunk will build up over time. So it's a good idea to give it a good deep clean every now and then, especially after a harsh winter. Now, a clean drivetrain is a happy drivetrain because it'll run more efficiently, it'll run smoother, it'll work better, but it'll also last longer because it's not got any mud or grit wearing it out. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to give this drivetrain a really deep clean. So I think I've dragged Neil's downhill bike out of the locker here, and well, shockingly, it was the only dirty bike in the lockup for starters, and it's actually shocking how dirty it is. Look at those jockey wheels, just absolutely caked in gunk. So for a deep clean, I like to take the parts off. I like to take the cassette off and the jockey wheels and the chain itself so that I can really scrub it. But also, you know, there's hard to reach areas behind the jockey wheels, and the chain, you don't want to be cleaning that and then rotating it round onto dirty jockey wheels and just chasing your tail generally. So me personally, for a deep clean, you're only going to do this every now and then, it's better to take them off. So I'm just taking off the chain with chain link pliers. Now be sure to check whether your quick link is single use or not. If it's single use, you're going to need a new one to put it back on. So as these are pretty gunked up, I would take a note of lower and the upper jockey wheel, and if they are in any kind of direction, just in case they're too gunked up or worn, to see how they go back on. So that's my lower, and you might need to manipulate the derailleur a little bit to get to your upper. So try and take note of any washers that fall out, where they go back, and keep a record of whether it's the upper or lower and which direction they go in, or what way round they go, because you might not have the signs or the writing still on the jockey wheels after you've cleaned it. Now, I would absolutely love a parts washer in this workshop, but we don't have one. So the next best thing is my homemade method, which is basically some old takeaway containers, which I'm going to fill with some warm water and just another one to give it a good scrub in, just to protect my work surface, basically. But probably a good idea not to use your mum's best ones, just some old ones will do. An array of brushes will really help. A big one is good for your cassette, and I would say anything with a claw like this one will get some of that gunk off your jockey wheels, and something really stiff as well, like a detailing brush, will really work some of that gunk off. I'm going to be using a drivetrain cleaner, mainly because I'm using the sort of warm water method, which means I can unscrew it and pour it in. There are some spray methods out there. You could probably use some washing up liquid, but it may not be as easy to use. It may not give you the finish that you want, but you know, use the products that you want to. And just for bonus here, bonus products, something like an MO94, just to get some of that water out of the chain once you've finished cleaning it, is a really good idea to stop it rusting up afterwards. Some grease as well for your free hub when you put your cassette back on there, and of course your favorite lube for when your nice new chain is back on there. So I've got some warm water in my little takeaway cup here, and I'm just going to pour some drivetrain cleaner, or whatever your favorite cleaner is. A degreaser is probably going to be better for this sort of thing. And then I might actually give the chain a bit of a spritz before I put it in as well, just to really soak it in. Now, the idea of the warm water is, well, if you think about when you're washing up, it's always easier to clean those pans when it's warm rather than cold. So already you can see that gunk starting to move, but it will be better if we can leave it to soak for a bit. So let's pop that in there. Ta-da! So you can already see that the gunk is starting to come out of the chain. Chain even starting to look a bit silver there, which is lovely. So I'd probably leave that for about 5 or 10 minutes and you can get on with cleaning your drivetrain or your jockey wheels while that soaks, and then just pop it out and have a look at what you've done. Either put it on a bit of glue roll, or you can do what I do, get another piece of Tupperware and just get it into the corners of the Tupperware so you can really give it a good scrub. And then go all the way down the chain and flip it over and do it on the other side. So you can see already the bottom one's a lot more silver than the top one, which we haven't scrubbed yet. So a good firm brush or even a toothbrush would be great for really getting into all of those linkages. So the reason I love this sort of Tupperware is because you can really get it into the corner edges of the Tupperware and just keep moving it along, putting it in, scrubbing it, and then moving it along again. And that way you know you've got every inch of that chain. And being as it's not on the bike anymore, you know it's not rotating round on some dirty jockey wheels. You're doing a proper job here. So I'm nearly at the end of the chain here. It's quite hard work. It does take a long time because you're gonna have to do this. You're gonna get to the end of the chain and then you're gonna have to flip it over and do it again. But you know what? That's what a deep clean is. Then what I do is basically pop it in maybe for a quick soak, and then I'd run it under a tap or like wash it in some clean water. So we've given it a scrub front and back. So I'm just going to give it a quick soak for another couple of minutes just to get what we've just scrubbed out of the linkages off the chain, and then we can give it a nice little rinse in some clean water. So I'm just going to wash it under some water in the tap, probably some warm water, just to see how it's looking, just to identify if there's any more scrubbing I need to do. Now you may need to dry this off and repeat the process, but you know, put on some music, have a nice time. So I'm just drying off the chain now and I'm looking at it and I'm seeing it's pretty clean. There's barely any dirt in there, but there are some marks on it where rust has stained it. You know, that's going to happen. It's not a big problem for your chain, but maybe you want to consider a new chain soon. Get a chain checker, check the stretch on the chain, see if it's coming to the end of its life. Maybe it's time to replace it anyway. But for now, it is nice and deeply cleaned, so we can get that back on the bike. So next up is the cassette. I do like to take this off because I can give it a really good scrub with my hands and not have a frame in the way or a wheel in the way. And also I can check in the back. I've had all sorts pulled out of there, sticks, straw, all sorts. So it's a good idea to take it off, but you don't have to. Now, drivetrain cleaner, obviously. You can soak this. The reason I'm not is because it doesn't fit in my Tupperware, but if you have something and you can soak it, by all means, go ahead. Otherwise, good old elbow grease and some drivetrain cleaner will do it. So just give it a good old scrub. And this kind of demonstrates another reason why I like to take the cassette off, because look at all the spray that you get. You don't want those on your disc brakes if you've got them. That's going to contaminate your discs unless you've got any disc brake covers. So if you're leaving these on the bike, then make sure you do use some kind of towel or disc brake covers to protect your brakes from all of this dirt that's coming off. Okay, so believe it or not, that is clean. It looks half black and half silver because, well, I think this cassette used to be black. It's just been worn silver. But if you look nice and close, it is actually clean. So make sure you do determine between mud and, well, drivetrain color, basically. I've given it a rinse. I'm just going to dry it off and pop it back on the free hub body. I'm choosing to wipe down the free hub body at the moment. If you've got time, I would say give it a proper wash, but do make sure you cover up the discs or even take them off, because as you saw when I cleaned the cassette, it can spray some muck around. So just giving that a wipe, nice and clean, and then getting some grease or some anti-seize on there, just to protect it from the elements and make sure things don't seize up after getting any water ingress. So with your nice greased up free hub and your thread on your cassette, it's ready to go back on however you took it back off. Jockey wheels. I've been dying to get to these because look at them, they're like a slab of cake. Now I would usually put these on a piece of kitchen roll or a piece of paper and just label them up. Make sure you know that this is your higher and this is your lower if you've taken them off, and make sure all your washers are still in place. Now the reason I don't put these in to soak is because, well, there's bearings in them, so they need to spin nicely. I don't want to soak out all the grease. Drivetrain cleaner shouldn't damage them, but I'd just rather scrub them. So you get a really thick brush, really thick bristled brush, and just get the main dirt and cake off of it. Look at all of that. Get all of that off. A toothbrush is a really good tool for this. You can do this on the bike as well. You know, without the wheel, you can get behind it a lot easier. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm taking them off today. So as you can see, they're starting to look a bit more like plastic and not like mud. Look at all this that's come off. And you know, this is just a manual labor thing here. Clean them up as best you can until you start to see the teeth again and you start to see the grooves. You might even find that you'll see higher or lower written on there, and your direction arrows might come back to life. So I've just wiped these down and just given the bearings a bit of a wipe too. At this point, it's a good idea to check that they still spin quite freely. This one's not too bad. It's not as free as I'd like. It should spin all the way around quite quickly. So it's probably a telltale sign that those bearings are on their way out and you might need to get a new set of jockey wheels. Technically, you can take off this O-ring and put some grease in there to give it a bit of life, but also technically, once you've picked that out, you've compromised the seal and they're not gonna last as long as a new set. So don't forget that your new clean chain is about to roll around on this chain ring. So you might want to give that a bit of a scrub and a clean, and just so you don't put dirt back on it. Okay, ready to put the jockey wheels back on to a reasonably clean derailleur. I'm not going to clean all of your bike, Neil. So hopefully you've remembered which jockey wheel is which. You need to make sure that you get those little washers on either side of the bearings, and hopefully you've remembered which way they're supposed to spin as well, if they're directional. So top one first, because that usually keeps your derailleur together. So we're just going to put the chain back on, check to see if your chain is directional when you roll it back on there. It could have some arrows or it might just have branding on the outside. Also, when you're threading it through, make sure it stays to the left of any little bridges in your derailleur, because otherwise that's going to make one heck of a racket. It's also not going to be very good for your derailleur or your chain. Lovely. And then up and over the top jockey wheel. So your chain link should be directional. There's usually an arrow on there pointing back at the bottom. It's the direction that your chain travels in. So I'm going to click one in here, get my other one in the opposite direction. So just fit them into each other and give them a bit of a pull so they stay in place. If you've got the back wheel in, you can rotate this back up to the top and put some pressure on the pedals to click this into place, or you can do it with your chain link pliers. So if you haven't already, you're just going to need to put your back wheel in and you should have a lovely clean drivetrain. So that's your drivetrain deep cleaned. Now, Neil, I'm not going to clean the rest of your bike, but the most important part is now clean and working lovely and should last a lot longer now. So once you finish cleaning, maybe add your favorite lubricant to it. I'd recommend adding a drop to every link and let it soak in overnight, and just wipe off the excess before you ride it the next day. But other than that, you're good to go. So let us know if this video was helpful down in the comments below, and give us a thumbs up. See you next time.